Thank you. Thank you. Well, for my portion of the evening, I'm going to take my glasses off. I feel like I already know what you look like. I was pleased when I was asked to be a part of this. Maine is a wonderful place, and Christmas is a special time. And Christmas in Maine is a time with a lot of memories. And when asked to participate, I thought, well, I have a very specific memory I'd like to share. And I don't share this very often, but I'm going to share it with you. One of the things that I get upset about is that people misunderstand Mainers. They often, folks from away will tell you that Mainers are standoffish, cold, hard to get to know. Not necessarily true. I think what they're really perceiving, misunderstanding perhaps, is that Mainers, particularly rural Mainers of the multi-generational variety, well, there's a kind of philosophy. They don't care that much. It's a pragmatism. They don't care that much what your religious thinking or your philosophy or a lot of other, they don't care about that stuff. What they want to know is, do you have jumper cables and will you stop? That's what they care about. And I know about this. When I was 26 years old, I was just married, I moved to a dirt road in Palmyra, Maine. Jimmy Carter was in the White House. Inflation, the interest rate, the prime rate was 20%. Gas crisis was upon us. The gas prices were doubling. I thought it was a good time to strike out and be self-employed in the arts. I lived in a little cabin on a dirt road. Up one way, about 1.5 miles, was the Sprague family, Ford and Mary and their 3 boys, and about the same distance in the other direction was a kind of a rolling commune, a kind of a group of folks from exotic places like Pennsylvania and California. They were sort of majoring in marijuana cultivation and Grateful Dead studies. But we all got along pretty good, and I was working at the local bars, and everything was all right in the summer, but as fall came around, a friend of mine referred to the folks that ran this commune as trustafarians. They had other means of support other than working, and so when the weather got cold, they headed down south someplace, and the rest of us kind of battened down the hatches. Well, in point of fact, it was a very hard winter. The economy was terrible. But before these commune folks left, they stopped by my cabin and they told us they had had a hog that they'd raised named Francis Bacon. They were vegetarians, but a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. So they had Francis Bacon slaughtered, and Ford Sprague did the slaughtering, and they let us know that the pork chops and everything were and the bacon were in Ford's freezer in case we needed anything. Well, I took that down, and sure enough, about a month later, I needed it. It was that time of winter where it's dark about 4 in the afternoon in December, you know, about the second week in December, and it was brutally cold. The ground was frozen, the leaves were off the trees, it had started to snow, and frankly, to be quite honest, there was very little money, and there consequently was very little food. I'm not sure up until that point as I'd ever really experienced wondering where I was going to get food to eat, but I did experience that. My wife and I were right at the desperate edge, and it was a frightening experience, and it was also somewhat humiliating. But as I pondered what to do, I found my mind wandering to the pork, the bacon and all that sort of thing that was in Ford's freezer up the road. So one night, maybe a week and a half before Christmas, I didn't want to go ask for help. I'm a Mainer too. I don't feel comfortable asking for help. I feel like I should not need any help, but I decided I had to go ask for help. And I walked up the road. It was about 6 o'clock at night, but it might as well have been midnight, pitch black, about 3 below zero, the wind blowing. I bundled up. I got up to Ford's house, walked in the front door. You know these Maine farmhouses, I don't know if you know, but they're about 110 degrees inside all year round. In the summer, they're canning from the wood stove, and in the winter, the wood stove's just going, so it's blasting out. And you can't just drop in a Maine farmhouse and say your piece and leave. You've got to play cribbage for an hour and a half. And have a beer and talk about the Red Sox, and there's a lot of things you have to do. So I was there a couple of hours. Ford and I had played a couple of games of cribbage, and things had gone on, and I finally came out with it, and I said, Ford, Bruce and them, they told me if we got to the point where we could use a little food, that you might have some down in your freezer that they had put aside with you. Well, Ford looked me right in the eye. He stopped what he was doing. He got a look on his face, and he said, you want some food, do you? And I said, well, that Bruce and them, he said, Mary, he called to his wife, Mary, he said, get in here. But he didn't look very happy about this, and I felt, oh my gosh, I've said something wrong, and I've done something wrong, and they went down in the basement, and they filled about 6 or 8 grocery bags with pork, roasts, canned peas, canned corn, canned beets, and all this other kind of stuff. 6 or 8 grocery bags. But the atmosphere, let me just say, it was hot in the room, but the atmosphere was frosty, and I felt terrible. I felt like I crossed some kind of a line, but I didn't know what I crossed. Well, he brought them up. I was sitting in the kitchen, still hadn't said a word. He went out the front door, started up his old Land Rover, got that running, warmed it up a little bit. You know, this is Maine reverse snobbery. You don't want a brand new car. You want something that's got 300,000 miles on it. You keep it running with duct tape and bungee cords and WD-40. That's from Maine. So he had that going, and he motioned to me to come out. We put the groceries in the back of the Land Rover. He drove me down. By that time, I realized it had been snowing the whole time we was in there, and it's about 6 or 8 inches of snow. He drove me down to my place, still didn't say a word in the vehicle, and the moon had come out. It was dark, but it was moonlit night. He pulled into my drive, and I opened the door. We put the groceries in. My wife came, and we put in the groceries, and I was just ready to turn around and say goodnight to Ford, and he motioned me like this. And the door shut. We were standing alone in the snow out in my front yard. And Ford looked at me and he says, don't you ever do that again. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to fall through the floor. He says, don't you ever set down the road from me and be hungry again. He says, I won't have it. He says, we've got food in that basement we put up 6 summers ago. We got to throw it away. We got so much of it. You need something, you come to me. And he, big grin broke across his face, and he reached his hand, and he says, Merry Christmas, Sam. That's me. Thank you.